Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear brothers and sisters, we have the honor today to receive, to have a guest, Dr. Mubasher Hussain, who comes from Pakistan. He's an assistant professor in the Islamic International University, Islamabad. And alhamdulillah, mashallah, he was invited to UK by Oxford University for a conference in which many other prestigious academics around the world came from America and other places, France and other places. And the Sheikh has done his PhD in Harvard University, so he's well-learned Islamic scholar. And today, because he has written and translated many books, and he has a particular, taste for the fundamentals of fiqh and Islamic jurisprudence. So this is why we invited him to do a biography today of Imam Shafi, who was one of the greatest Imam, and the first to have written, a book on Usulul Fiqh and Islamic sciences. So today, inshallah, he will start a talk, inshallah, now regarding Imam Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inna alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم من همزه ونفخه ونفثه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فلولا نفر من كل فرقة منهم طائفة ليتفقهوا في الدين وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من يرد الله به خيرا يفقهه في الدين. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most beneficial. First of all, I would like to thank all of you, and in particular Brother Hussain Khan, for inviting me here to meet with the Muslim Cambridge community and to share my ideas with respect to the given topic. And before I start my talk about Imam Shafi, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that unfortunately the very first day I entered the UK, I entered with cough and some chest infection, fever, so that's still with me. But I will try my best to enable you to understand the message of the talk and the topic that I'm going to discuss about that. So the topic is about Imam Shafi, Muhammad bin Idris Shafi, rahmatullah alayh, the great scholar, born in 150 after Hijrah, the same year another great scholar, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, died. And Imam Shafi died in 204 after Hijrah, that is equal to 820 CE. Imam Shafi rahimahullah, born in Gaza, according to some reports, Asqalan, and raised in Mecca and studied over there for many years, and in other cities like Medina. Among his teachers' list, there are many hadith scholars, fiqh scholars, the jurists, and even there are some theologians from whom the Imam Shafi he had studied. With respect to Usul al-Fiqh, or the legal theory, Imam Shafi had been considered the master of the science of Islamic law, and even he had been placed with respect to Islamic law equal to the level that was given to Aristotle with respect to logic. And even it is said that Imam Shafi was the master architect of Islamic legal sciences. And there are so many titles, and even the book he had authored, though he authored a lot of books, but the famous book on usul he authored entitled Risala. This book is said that it is the ever first book on usul al-fiqh in the Islamic history that we have preserved, though there are so many other scholars, the jurists, who have talked about the Islamic legal sciences, but a proper book that we had in our time over the 14th centuries, so that is the Risala authored by Imam Shafi. I have divided my talk into sub-sections. The first would be about the introduction of the book or the key points the book dealt with, and the other section include importance of Imam Shafi in the legal history, and at the end some concluding remarks. I am not going to discuss the personal piety, taqwa, and the characters of Imam Shafi, because we know these are the great scholars. They are very much pious people and learned scholars. So with the given time, my focus would be on the important points that have generated a discussion on Islamic legal theory among the Muslim jurists and even throughout the subsequent centuries after Imam Shafi. You must have learned that Imam Shafi is considered as the Nasirul Sunnah. Nasirul Sunnah means defender of the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him. But you might be surprised that Imam Shafi also was accused or blamed with the mukhalifa of Sunnah. A book was written about him. The title of the book reads, Kitab al-Rad al-Shafi'i fima khalafa fihi al-Kitab wa Sunnah. So it is more or less the same like we find in the history the great hadith scholar Ibn Abi Shayba. He has made a chapter in his book Al-Musannaf respecting Imam Abu Hanifa. وهذا الباب فيه بيان ما خالف فيه أبو حنيفة الأحاديث أو the like. And even such type of discussions in the history we find with respect to Imam Malik rahimahullah and Imam Lais bin Sa'd rahimahullah. Imam Lais bin Sa'd wrote a letter that has been quoted in the book of Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah. The title of the book is Ilam al-Muwaqqin, the famous one. The letter has been recited there. So according to that letter, the Lais bin Sa'd wrote criticizing Imam Malik bin Anas and blaming him that you are going to violate the hadith. So these are the things that we find when we study the Islamic legal history or the overall Islamic history. There are discussions, debates with respect to hadith. The scholars sometimes they accuse the others with respect to the violation of hadith or the things like that. But anyhow, Imam Shafi had been given the title of Nasir Sunnah. That is much important. So I will discuss why he was given the title of Nasir Sunnah, defender of the Sunnah. So here some points about his great book, Ar-Risala. This book, Risala, it is said that it was written as a letter to great Muhaddis Abdul Mahdi when he asked Imam Shafi some questions respecting the validity of hadith and the use of hadith as a source of law. So he wrote a letter in detail discussing various principles of hadith. But it is also said that Risala, the book, has been authored by Imam Shafi 2 times, the Risala Qadim, the old version, and the Risala Jadid, the latest version. So the main key points that are discussed in the book are as follows. Number 1, Imam Shafi concluded that in his Risala, the law must be derived from the Quran. This is the point number 1. Number 2, the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is also revelation as the Quran. And hence, the Sunnah is also binding in legal discussions. Number 3, no contradiction between the Quran and the Sunnah. I will elaborate the points after that. Number 4, both the Quran and the Sunnah complement each other hermeneutically. Number 5, a legal ruling inferred by ambiguous text is not subject to disagreement, in contrast to that inferred by means of qiyas and ijtihad, because those legal opinions always a subject of disagreement. Number 6, the procedure of qiyas or ijtihad, as Imam Shafi used the word qiyas in the meaning of ijtihad. The procedure of qiyas and ijtihad and the sanctioning instrument of consensus, ijma, are prescribed by the revealed text. That means qiyas and ijma, the consensus, both have their basis in the Quran and the Sunnah. And besides, all rules are derived directly or indirectly from the Quran and the Hadith, because both are the only authoritative sources that constitute the exclusive foundations of the Islamic law. So these are some basic points that we come across when we read the book Ar-Risala. Pardon me. Actually, when we study the historical context in which Imam Shafi wrote this book or discussed these matters of sources of Islamic law, it was a time when there were a number of Islamic schools or school of thought were emerging with various different legal theories and with various speculative theological backgrounds. For example, Imam Shafi first studied with the Hijazite scholars. He went to Makkah, he raised in Makkah and studied with various, Imam Malik and others. And even he became famous as one of the followers of the Malikite school. He became famous. Oh, Imam Shafi, Muhammad Idris, oh, he is a Maliki. And he made a number of, the munazaras and the polemical writings and discussing and defending even the Imam Malik's legal thought and the principles. So he became famous as a Maliki follower. And in the same period, we find that among the other schools, one of the famous and the leading school in comparison with the Hijazite school is found in Iraq, the school of Imam Abu Hanifa. Imam Shafi traveled to many Islamic cities, Islamic countries at that time, and even he went to Baghdad, Kufa, Basra, in the Iraqian cities, and there he came across with the Kufian scholars like the famous one Muhammad bin Hassan Shaybani, rahimahullah. And he made a number of discussions with Muhammad bin Hassan Shaybani. First, he learned about the legal philosophy of Imam Abu Hanifa through his disciples, Imam Yusuf, his writings, and Imam Muhammad bin Hassan Shaybani. And sorry. And he refuted the Hanafi doctrines. So this is one historical background. Imam Shafi is coming from the background of Hijazite school, and he is making some discussions with the Hanafite school. I will elaborate especially some of the points on Usul Hadith. I have also authored a book on legal traditions and Iraqi jurists. So what kind of the Usul Hadith offered by the Iraqi school that the Imam Shafi was not very much pleased with them, and he made and offered his critique. So this is the one background. Another background is that it was also a time when the rationalistic approach was also emerging. And many of the scholars, even it is said that a number of scholars with them the Imam Shafi studied, you can say Imam Shafi's shuyukh or his teachers. So a number of them, they are also said that they were from the rationalistic school. Against the rationalists, there were also traditionalists, the muhaddithin, the hadith scholars. So it is also very much known to us by means of sources that we find the books of the Rijal books, bibliographical books and others. So it is another background at the time of the life of Imam Shafi. He realized that among these two circles, the rationalist one and the other, the traditionalist one, the rationalists, they are many times, they are refuting the hadith in the name of Ra'i, that is called a Ra'iyu, human, on the basis of human intellect, human reasoning. many times. It was so, quite a fashion to reject hadith on the name of simple, it is not according to the logic, or it is not according to the our wisdom, our legal reasoning, human legal reasoning, so like that. And on the other hand, among the traditionalists, the hadith scholars, it was also known that, or the Imam Shafi observed that, the hadith scholars, they are many times, they are against the qiyas at all. Qiyas, the legal analogy. So, it is another perspective. So these are, I just mentioned two perspectives from where the Imam Shafi had to develop his own legal theory. So he studied here, there, everywhere, and he observed a number of legal theories and legal approaches towards the hadith sciences and even towards the analogical reasoning, qiyas. So he observed a number of things that he found that these are the good things or the good principles. He observed that, and observing that, he also refuted a number of things that he considered these things are weak or not very much aligned to the revealed sciences. So these are the two different perspectives. And even it is also, it should be noted that Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, rahimahullah, he is considered among his disciples, the students of Imam Shafi. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal is reported that he was not very much pleased with the legal approach of Imam Shafi. There are some reports respecting this this reality, or you may say. Because Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, it is reported that he was against qiyas, but not as much as the Daud Zahri and the other Zahris. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, it is said that he was against qiyas, but unless there is a very, it is very necessary, you have to do qiyas, otherwise he was not in favor of qiyas. In contrast with Imam Shafi, because Imam Shafi offered qiyas and refined qiyas, and he offered a great detail with respect to different kinds of qiyas, al-qiyas al-istiqra'i, al-qiyas al-tamthili, so many. So therefore, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal and even a number of other these scholars, it is reported that they were not very much pleased with the approach of Imam Shafi. So this is also one aspect. So the points I have just summarized here, the Imam Shafi's book as a Risala offered, 6 or 7 points I have just mentioned here. So these are the points discussed by Imam Shafi in his book. Though it is said that this book of a Risala, it lacks systematic methodology. So we can say, if we observe that in the same period, the books on Al-Amwal, Kitab al-Amwal, written by a number of scholars, Imam Yusuf, Imam Qasim bin Salam and others. So likewise, these books deal with the Islamic financial system. The books were not very much disciplined or organized or not articulated. So the same happened with a Risala with respect to Usul al-Fiqh. And therefore it said that if some researchers, scholars, they held the opinion that if we consider that or believe that the book al-Risala is the very first book of Usul Fiqh, so it is not approved reality. Like there is a scholar Wail bin Hallaq and some others who held the opinion that Risala can be said that is the first book on Usul al-Fiqh. There are many others, and even the followers of the Hanafite school, with the passage over the time, they also responded Shafi school, saying that, oh, our great scholars, the founders of the school, like Sahiban, Yusuf, and Muhammad bin Shaybani and the other, they have also authored a number of books on Usul al-Fiqh. So this is also a discussion that happened to be in that period. So coming to the importance and contribution of Imam Shafi with respect to Hadith sciences and with respect to as well as Usul al-Fiqh. So here some are the other points. The first important point is that Imam Shafi had a direct contact with all the Sunnite schools. It's an interesting fact that Imam Shafi studied with Hijazite school. This is one contact of the Hijazite school, Imam Malik's Malki school. Other contact is that he traveled to Iraq and made a number of discussions with the Hanafite school. So this is another direct connection with the Hanafite school. Though there are a number of stories, Imam Shafi's mother was married to Imam Muhammad bin Shaybani, and a number of things. I am not going into detail of all of such type of things because some of maybe inauthentic or so. Just my focus is on some important academic or the legal points and the contribution that Imam Shafi has offered, and the points that are very much, considered and established by the academia and the scholars. So, focusing on the point, this is the importance of Imam Shafi, that he has very much direct connection with all of such type of schools. So, these are the two schools. And the other school is Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal and the many other great Hadith scholars. They were also students of Imam Shafi. And even Imam Shafi, when he studied with some of the, like Khalid Zanji, and I have noted some of the names of the scholars who are said that they were speculative theologians. So, like some of them, maybe you may say Mu'tazili. So he also had studied with them, and even his disciples, for example, the famous one, the Muzani. He said he was a Hadith scholar, but he was a scholar of, it is said that he was a theologian as well as he was very much influenced by the Mu'tazilite or the rationalistic approach more than being a Hadith scholar. So these are the things. So Imam Shafi, with respect to his influence, so this is an important aspect of Imam Shafi's contribution, or the Imam Shafi's interactions with all of such type of schools. And what Imam Shafi contributed towards the development of Islamic law and the other Islamic legal, the philosophy or the legal theory. So here I may discuss in some points. For example, number one, Imam Shafi bridged or tried to bridge both the Hijazite and the Iraqi approaches in an eclectic manner. In eclectic, I would say to bridge, to combine in an eclectic way. So here I just only discuss a few points. For example, Imam Shafi refuted the doctrine of Malikite school regarding the practice of the Tamul Ahl Madina, the people of Medina, when they preferred this practice of the Madian scholars or the people of Medina on Sunnah or on Hadith, Imam Shafi criticized and refuted this of their legal doctrine. So here, Imam Shafi, he is, at his time he was, rejecting, refuting a number of things from the Malikite Hijaz school. On the other hand, he also refuted a number of legal principles of Iraqite school as well. For example, the work I have authored, the book I just mentioned here, Ahadith Ahkam, Legal Tradition in Iraqi Jurists. So here, for example, in Imam Abu Yusuf, Qazi Abu Yusuf, and Muhammad bin Shaybani, they have authored a number of books, Kutub Zahir Riwaya, authored by Shaybani, and Kitab al-Kharaj by Abu Yusuf, and Ar-Radd ala Siyar al-Uzai, though it is compiled on behalf of the Kitab al-Um. So, in the books of Sahibain, Abu Yusuf and Muhammad bin Shaybani, we find that with respect to Usul al-Hadith, they offered a number of things that were considered controversial or raised the controversy among the Ahlul Rai or the Hanafite school and the Hadith scholars. For example, before that, we keep in mind that there were a number of principles respecting Usul al-Hadith that were common among both of the Iraqis and the Hijazis. For example, the importance of Sanad, the chain of the narrators, the reporters. So, I have studied the books of Sahibain thoroughly, and I found, for example, Abu Yusuf once he was criticizing Imam Ozai, and he asked him many times. He asked him a chain of narrators. Oh, Ozai, you are saying so and so. So, what is the sanad? What is the chain of narrators of, you are saying this is hadith. From where you have taken this hadith? There is no hadith, there is no chain of narrators, there are no reporters. From where you are taking this and saying that this is a hadith? So like that, the importance of sanad, it had been a common principle among the Hijazite school and the Iraqite school. So there are some other principles as well. I am not going into the common principles, but just drawing your attention to the reality that the controversial principles with respect to Usul al-Hadith between both the Iraqis and the Hijazis, among them, there are a few. For example, Abu Yusuf, he has mentioned that in his Ar-Radd ala Siyar al-Uzai and in some other of his writings, he held the opinion that he maintained إذا خالف الخبر الواحد الكتاب القرآن فهو مردود أو خالف السنة المشهورة فهو مردود أو خالف عموم البلوى فهو مردود. So whenever khabar al-wahid, I will explain what is the khabar al-wahid. It is said that a report that is transmitted by one from one and one, so generally speaking, but it doesn't mean that only the one is there all the time. Sometimes there are two reporters, but it is not getting the level of the Mustafis and Mashhur and so with regard to these usul of offered by Abu Yusuf, Imam Shafi, I think he was the first who refuted such type of usuls. In our time, we can say, some people, scholars, they have used the term al-naqd al-dirayat, usul al-dirayat, or like that. So Imam Shafi, we observe that he was the first in his discussions with the Iraqi scholars. He refuted vehemently he criticized Abu Yusuf and Muhammad ibn Shaybani, and all of these discussions we find in Kitab al-Umm. Though there are some scholars like, I think I should not mention the name of, so some people they say, oh no, Kitab al-Umm is not an authentic book, so leave them. Anyway, but these are the discussions reported in Kitab al-Umm and in Kitab al-Kharaj, Rad al-Asir al-Uzai and the other. So Imam Shafi refuted Iraqi jurists with respect to these kind of usul and said, oh, it means you are going to ignore a considerable number of hadiths implying such type of usuls. So this is the discussion that we find with respect to Imam Shafi. So here Imam Shafi, what he did an eclectic approach, or implying an eclectic approach. He was taking something from the Malkite school, and even at the same time he was refuting some of the Malkite schools or the philosophies as well. And here in the Iraqi school he was also taking something, I will discuss, and also at the same time he was refuting some others as well. So Imam Shafi, with respect to his approach to hadith and Khabar al-Khasa and al-Khasa or Khabar al-Wahid, here Imam Shafi tried to offer some of the hadith principles in order to save as much as possible the hadith reports that have some authentic chains of narrators, and even he maintained that if there is a hadith reported by one from one, Khabar al-Wahid and al-Wahid, Khabar al-Khas and al-Khasa, utilizing the special term of Imam Shafi. So he held that, okay, if all the reporters are authentic, trustworthy, so it doesn't matter to believe the report is correct and true, and the affiliation of this report, the Prophet peace be upon him. So we must believe it is an authentic hadith. This is one thing in his eclectic approach. And at the same time, he introduced a number of other principles with respect to hadith, or with respect to the hadith sciences. For example, he articulated the principle of the hadith al-musnad and the hadith al-mursal, and al-mursal al-khafi in particular. So it was a fashion that time. Some people among the hadith scholars, they were accepting the hadith, and even some of the jurists as well, even the reports and the hadith reports, even they were lacking some narrators or reporters in the chain of narrators. So, but they were accepting such type of narration of the reports. But Imam Shafi articulated some principles in order to synthesize some of the principles, because he, as I mentioned, that he was of the opinion that the hadith and as well as the Quran, hadith also are revealed and with a wahy. So we must derive, infer the legal opinion, the legal rulings, relying upon the Quran as well as relying upon a Sahih Hadith. So, with respect to the contributions of Imam Shafi, so this was one thing, and here are some other things as well. So, as I mentioned that Imam Shafi criticized on some of the hadith principles introduced by the Hanafite scholars. So we can say that it was a kind of a sort of his critique on rationalistic approach that was also maintained by a number of Hanafite jurists. Yes, and here's another important point of Imam Shafi's contribution is that he offered a number of principles in order to reconcile the apparently seemingly contradicting reports and the verses of the Quran. He offered some principles how we can reconcile between both of the contradictory things. I mean, if there's a hadith that contradicts apparently, seemingly, not truly, according to Imam Shafi, because he held that if hadith is sahih, according to Imam Shafi's usulul hadith, if the hadith is sahih, so we can't believe that a sahih hadith, an authentic hadith, can be in contrast with any verse of the Quran. So he offered a number of principles in this respect as well in order to make reconciliation of such type of, the seemingly contradictory situations. Yes, another point is that Imam Shafi also tried to bridge the gap between the rationalists and those traditionists, the hadith scholars, who spurned or rejected all human reasoning in religious matters. This is an important thing. And I think maybe this was one of the reasons some hadith scholars, they were not happy with Imam Shafi's principles, because Imam Shafi, for example, if I elaborate the point, the famous hadith scholars Imam Muhammad bin Ismail Bukhari rahimahullah, and even before him Ishaq ibn Rahway and Yahya ibn Ma'in and some others. So all of these great hadith scholars, it is reported that they were not very much happy with Imam Shafi, and even it is an established reality that Imam Bukhari did not take a single report from Imam Shafi. And even here I have written a number of hadith scholars, and according to them, Imam Shafi was zaifun fil hadith. It is also like there is controversy on Imam Abu Hanifa. So like the same you may find in the books on Imam Shafi. It is said that Imam Shafi was not authentic in this reporting. So this is a quite interesting thing. And so here is another point is that Imam Shafi, he was very much offering to bridge between different schools. So I indicated between two other schools, the rationalist and the traditionalist. So here are some other interesting points. Though Imam Shafi studied with all kind of scholars available in his time, but Imam Shafi is not considered neither the Mu'tazilit, for example, the famous scholar Ibn Qutayba. Ibn Qutayba, in his writings, he had not considered Imam Shafi neither among the Mu'tazilites, and even nor he mentioned him among the Hadith scholars. It's quite interesting. So, the point is that we can say when we study the lifespan of Imam Shafi and his academic contributions in his era, so we find that Imam Shafi stands in the middle of the road, I mean between the Zahrites and the Hadith scholars as well, between both of them, and at the same time in the middle of the road between the rationalists and the others. So, because of that, all the books written with respect to Usul al-Fiqh after Imam Shafi, these books are considered that the books or the authors, they followed the Tariqatul Mutakallimin. Not the Tariqatul Fuqaha, but Tariqatul Mutakallimin. So why? Why Tariqatul Mutakallimin? Because Imam Shafi, he studied with a number of Mutakallimin, and his students and his followers, among his followers, there are many who continued even the tradition of Mutakallimin to some extent, and they followed the way of Tariqatul Mutakallimin, writing the books on Usul al-Fiqh. Here are another important thing is that at the time of Imam Shafi, when he was offering his legal methodology, he was considered nothing. I mean, even after his death, for quite long time, even about, it is said, about 100 years, there was no recognition of Imam Shafi among the academic circles of the time. No recognition. Who is Imam Shafi? No. And even his book, that is said, the first ever written book on Usul al-Fiqh. No. There was no even mentioned in the academic discussions, this is the book of Usul al-Fiqh. And quite interestingly, we published from the institute where I am associated with, Islamic Research Institute, Islamabad, we translated the book Usul al-Fiqh, Ar-Risala, quite a long time ago. Maulana Amjad Ali from Karachi. So he translated the book. This happened before I joined the institute. The title of the rendered, I mean translate Urdu version of the book, the title was given, I don't know who suggested the title, but the title quite interesting, that Risala, I mentioned I mean the title includes that Risala fi Usul al-Fiqh wal Hadith. Not only Usul al-Fiqh, Usul al-Fiqh wal Hadith, I mean Usul al-Hadith as well. So why? Because half of the book dealt with the Hadith sciences only. Half of the book dealt with Hadith sciences. There is relatively a very short portion in the book that deal with the linguistic dimensions of Usul al-Fiqh. That in the after that, I mean the books that were authored in the present of time on Usul al-Fiqh, the books deal with quite the Mujmal, Mufassal, Muhkam, Mutashabih, and the Aam, Khas, and all of these terminology. But we find a number of things respecting the legal linguistic dimensions of Usul al-Fiqh. But comparatively, the small portion. So the major portion of the book deal with usul al-hadith. And therefore the title of the book, it was suggested that is Risala fi usul al-fiqh wal-hadith. Yes, so about the recognition of Imam Shafi. Imam Shafi offered whatever he offered in his time. It was considered a minority view because it happened in Islamic history that in the formative periods, particularly the teacher-student relationship that continued after the death of the scholar. So the same fashion we observed with respect to Imam Shafi. He authored a number of books, and he also produced a number of his students, disciples, who continued his legacy, tradition. But it was a time in the history, about 100 years behind Imam Shafi, where a scholar among the Shafii tradition came. His name is Ibn Suraj, died in 918. So Ibn Suraj, it is believed that among the Shafi'ite school, he was one of the most towering figure among the Shafi'ite school after Imam Shafi. So Ibn Suraj, he continued the legacy of Imam Shafi from that tradition, because he learned the legacy of Imam Shafi's legal theory from his students. I mean, the Imam Shafi's students and their students. And Ibn Suraj, he produced a great number of his disciples within the Shafi'ite school, who, with very powerful, in a very powerful academic way, introduced the legal theory of Imam Shafi, and even they were very successful to convince the others to to believe or to accept or to recognize the importance of the legacy or the legal theory of Imam Shafi. So it is also said that it was also a time, or it was a need of the time, when the school of Mu'tazila, after the Mehna period, there was a decline. It is observed in the history that it was a time of decline of the Mu'tazili schools, and it was also a time when there were Zahri's, Zahri school, Daud Zahri and the others. It happened to hold their opinions against the Qiyas, analogical reasoning, and in the same period it happened, some of the other scholars that said Hashaviya or some like the title is given. So it was a time when there was a need to bridge between both the traditions, to catch or to take into consideration the Qiyas and the analogical legal reasoning, and as well as to take the Hadith if it is Sahih according to the usul that developed by different schools. So the Hadiths were also given an importance at that time. So the need of the time compelled the scholars to take into serious consideration the way the Imam Shafi introduced, and the usul the Imam Shafi he articulated in his time about 100 years ago. And between this century, it is said that there was at all no recognition of Imam Shafi's legal theory. But when the necessity compelled the people, the scholars, so they drew their attention to recognize Imam Shafi as a scholar. And it is also important that this Ibn Suraj, who also made a great contribution. I mean, he refuted Daud Zahri in many ways, and he was also a person or a scholar with the speculative, the theology, and at the same time he was also a great hadith scholar as well. So these were some, scattered points. Of here, some concluding remarks, or you may say with respect to the Shafi'i understanding of Sunnite legal theory. So here are some concluding remarks. So, number one. Yeah. We must believe that there are two types of domains, the ijtihadic domains and the non-ijtihadic domains in Islamic sciences. I mean, some issues or the legal matters that are the subject of ijtihad, further, discussions and even disagreements, and the other domain that is not subject of ijtihad at all. With respect to the domain of ijtihad, though it is said that there are usul and furu, and usul are not the subject of ijtihad, but there are many scholars who said or held the opinion, oh no, sometimes in usul the ijtihad also had happened. For example, Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he discussed about Royat Bari Ta'ala. It was a matter of disagreement among the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So he said, sometimes it is possible ijtihad can take place in this domain, the domain of usul. So usul in comparison with the furu. And from another perspective, usul is also that we say the legal foundations, the usulul fiqh. So usulul fiqh, it is also said that the usulul fiqh that were introduced by the great scholars, for example, istihsan, the juristic preference, and istislah, maslaha, salutary purpose, and objectives of Sharia, maqasid Sharia, the Sharia Sabiqa, and many more, the moods of ijtihad. So it is said that all of these moods of ijtihad, or the usulul fiqh, such type of usul, introduced by the scholars, so they are not as the revealed text, like the Nas, the Quran, and the Sunnah. So it is possible to disagree with a scholar over the issue of moods of ijtihad or the usulul ijtihad. So therefore, Imam Shafi, what he did, he criticized here and there, and he offered his eclectic approach, taking from here something and taking from others. So like it happened in the history. So we should be, very open in this regard. Number two, ijtihad is indispensable, very important in order to extend the divine law to the emerging issues in order to cope with the needs of the time. So ijtihad has always been very important. And in so doing, when the scholars are offering ijtihad, so the epistemological problems raised, however, and tackled differently by different juries. So we should have our mind open, and we should respect all of these great scholars. So whether or not we follow one of them or the other, but we should have an equal respect to all of our great scholars. Number three, According to my opinion, here you can say, for example, sometimes we say the contextualization, I say the context is very much important. So it is also related to ijtihad. For example, the hadith al-a'immatu min Quraysh, the rulers will be, or what we can translate, so from the Quraysh, the tribe of Quraysh. So this is a hadith. But the interpretation of this hadith by Imam Nasruddin Albani, Muhaddis Rahimahullah, and even in the South Asian scholar Abul Kalam Azad, what he did, he made a new interpretation with respect to Al-A'immatu min Quraysh in their time. And even here, I learned that the hadith La yarisu al-Muslim al-Kafir. So here there is another new interpretation of it, means that La yarisu al-Muslimu al-Kafir al-Harabi, the warriors. So these, I mean that I am not, refuting or criticizing, but I am taking such type of context into consideration, and we should take it into consideration. So the contextualization of hadith, it is very much important. So I am running short of time, so I am not going to explain. So number 4. Likewise, it is my humble opinion that these principles of usulul hadith offered from here Imam Shafi, and there from the Iraqi jurists, and by some other hadith scholars with the passage of time, so they are ijtihad. So we can discuss, but it is my opinion. Number 5. The issue is any interpretation binding upon the subsequent scholars? This is also important point that we learn from the contributions of Imam Shafi. If he thought that the interpretations and the usul articulated by his predecessors, so they are binding, so then Imam Shafi was not able to offer his own principles or made his own evaluation, examination of the previous scholars' contributions. So here is some of the things, the problem of ta'addud haqq. I am not going into detail, and there are the takhrij method introduced by the jurist, and also the difference between nas and sharia, between sharia and fiqh. So even there's another debate, qada'ul qadi yanfu zahiran or batinan or la batinan. So these are the things. And another thing is there are a number of things that I think I have to stop over here, but just the last point that I should discuss here is the role of Shah Waliullah Dehlavi, but just if I haven't. Okay. So I've studied the great scholar Shah Waliullah Dehlavi. He contributed towards Islamic sciences, and he held his unique, approach towards tasawwuf as well. I am not going to discuss this aspect of his life, but I am just discussing his legal thought precisely. Imam Shah Waliullah, with respect to his legal theory or the legal approach, he was very much convinced by the great scholar of Imam Shafi. So, according to one study conducted by Mazhar Baqa, Rahimahullah, he concluded that Imam Shah Waliullah, he turned 180 degree against the Hanafite school, and he became a Shafi. So, it is a study. So, but in short, I say Imam Shah Waliullah, he said, I learned Usulul Ijtihad by reading the books of Imam Shafi. I learned the Usulul Ijtihad by reading the books of Imam Shafi. And he considered Imam Shafi I mean the most important and having the most accurate legal theory. And even Shah Waliullah said, in the Islamic history, the most important scholars happened to come onto the arena of Islamic legal sciences from the Shafi'ite schools. So though there are some other points, Imam Shafi, Shah Waliullah considered some of the hadith scholars, they were Shafis like Abu Dawood and some other scholars. He said they were all Shafi'ite scholars. But with respect to Imam Bukhari, Shah Waliullah, I observed he was not very much clear. Sometimes he wanted to say that, but he did not say it. Imam Bukhari was more or less, he said Imam Bukhari is mujtahid mutlaq or something like that. So there are some points, and pardon me, I was not quite well. So, but I did my best to convey the message. So, if there is something wrong, so please you can draw my attention to that right now. And after that, so I will be very much happy to reconsider my opinion if there is something wrong. So this is some points, scattered points. So, Jazakumullah khaira. Assalamu alaikum.